Yeah, in 2001, three animal cubs, a lion, a Bengal tiger, and an American black bear cub were rescued from a drug dealer who was keeping them as pets. The animals had been abused and neglected when they were seized, and they ended up taking them to an animal sanctuary. Now, initially, the staff tried to separate them, and they're thinking, I mean, these are three large predators. I mean, they're going to tear each other to shreds. And what happened is they were completely uncooperative. And so finally they decided, well, let's just put them back together and see what happens. And they got along great. I mean, now 12 years later, they spend most of their days chasing each other around, playing ball with each other, and eating the treats that they're fed by the workers. One of the workers said, they live together and they don't see their differences. Yeah, I saw that story and I said, wow, I mean, what a cool picture. You know, in a lot of ways, it really kind of describes us. Lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. You know, Aaron would probably agree that sometimes I can be likened to a bear. But, you know, I mean, if you think about it, we're this collection of different life stories. You know, different personality types, different vocations and family backgrounds, different joys and hurts, different struggles, different individual callings, and yet we have all been called together into something bigger than any of those individual components, the church. It's this unique vehicle which God has chosen to work through in order that his message of rescue and redemption might be spread throughout the world. You and I. Us, the church. But, you know, God's not calling us to some kind of haphazard, disjointed kind of union here. Rather, the church is called to live as a body of brothers and sisters unified for the cause of Christ. And Paul really draws this out in the letter to the church in Philippi. He says in Philippians 1:27, whatever happens, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I'll know that you stand firm in the one Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel. Now, a few things that we should know about the text here. Paul's writing this letter to a diverse group of believers. In fact, it really keeps in line with the lions and tigers and bears image. You have in Philippi this church made up of a patchwork of different believers. Everyone from Lydia, who was this wealthy woman kind of at the start of the church there, to this Greek slave girl that had been freed, to a middle-class prison guard. So you've got this very diverse group, and it's a church that Paul cares deeply for. I mean, this letter is really a letter of encouragement. I mean, he's not trying to correct something that they've been messing up in. In a lot of ways, he's saying thank you. I think that's maybe why this letter stands out so much to me, because I feel the same way about our church. Very dear to me. I love what God has been doing through this church. And Paul is, he sees that in the church in Philippi. And he's also writing this from prison. He's not sure if he's going to see those who are part of this church again. And he's saying, listen, I don't know what's going to happen, whether I'm going to get out of here or not, but let your lives speak so loudly of the gospel that I hear about it either way. Now, if you dig into some of the imagery that Paul uses here, it's stunning how much is packed into this one verse. And I think it paints a pretty vivid picture of what he's calling the church in Philippi to, and ultimately what we can take from it as well. Paul says, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. This would have been pretty poignant to them because the Greek word for conduct points to an image of citizenship. Now, Philippi was a Roman colony. I mean, so these that are reading this, they would have gotten this in a big way because they're extremely proud of their association with Rome. They dressed as Romans, they spoke the same language, they followed the same customs. They took their citizenship very, very seriously. And Paul is saying in that same way, hold yourselves up as citizens of the kingdom of God. Speak it, dress it, live it out. Live a life worthy of such citizenship. Paul goes on to say, then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I'll know that you stand firm in the one Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel. What happens is he kind of switches imagery here. The word stako is translated stand firm. It kind of described this Roman military formation in which the soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder and back to back, and they would have their shield out and their spear out. So you've got this image here of troops kind of locked into the formation together, fighting for the same cause. So, I mean, here in this one verse, you have Paul saying, not only is this something that you should live as a citizen or have an allegiance to, but also that it's lived out alongside others who have that same allegiance, kind of locking arms, if you will. I mean, it's this really cool picture, and I'm not sure about you, but for the most part, I hear it and I nod my head and I go, yeah, that's what this is all about. I'm in. But then life, you know? I mean, it's easy to lose focus on what Paul is calling us to here, and ultimately what God is calling us to as the church. I think there are a number of things that can kind of serve to take us out of lockstep with each other in our mission for the gospel. But I've noticed a few that are really prominent in my own life, and maybe you can identify with them as well. The first is my faith can have a tendency sometimes to become a private affair. You know, it ceases to extend beyond myself or my immediate family. I get this bubble going on where everything is neat and somewhat manageable, mostly because I think that I'm in control of it. A lot of times I think this can just happen because of the sheer busyness of our lives as much as anything else. You know, we've got this thing going on or that thing going on. The kids have this and we have that, and somewhere in the mix of it gets lost this faith that's supposed to be lived out in the context of the body, sharing together, praying together, celebrating, hurting, loving together. You know, we see that as we look back to the text, and Paul uses this word here, sun athleo, which gets translated into striving together. It gives us the English word for athletics, sun athleo, athletics. So he's drawing this a picture of the church striving together, working together as a team. I mean, we've all heard the saying, there's no I in team, right? You know, I mean, it might as well have come from the Apostle Paul here. That's what he's saying here. Surfing is kind of opposite of that. You know, I love surfing. And when you're out there waiting for a wave, you got all these people in the water with the same mission. As soon as that wave rolls in, they're trying to get into position and be the one that gets on that wave. You know? It's everyone for themselves. But the church is different than that. You know, the church isn't an individual sport. It's not surfing. It's not running. It's not boxing. Okay, maybe it's close to boxing sometimes, but you know, it's not an individual sport. It's a team. And if you look towards the end of this letter to the Philippians, Paul writes something that I think is really key for us to focus on. He says, I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. Something has separated them, you know. He doesn't go into much detail here, but it's obvious there's something that has come between these two members of the church, some kind of division that's going on here. It's, you know, likely that it's some kind of hurt. And that's another one of those things that can really kind of mess me up. You know, it's easy to get offended by something that someone says or does, whether it was intentional or not, you know. And it seems when that happens that all you can see for a while is that hurt, that offense, that way that I've been wronged. You know, does that happen to you? A while back, my heart got pretty messed up because of the way I perceived someone that was very close to me treating someone else who was very close to me. And it just started eating me up. And it's become this pretty personal hurt and struggle in my mind and heart and ultimately my attitude. As I seem to get caught up in this again and again and again. And what's messed up is I don't even know if they realize it or not. But it doesn't matter. I mean, here I am caught up in this hurt, unable to move on, unable to see this person without seeing the offense. The other day it kind of it reared its ugly head again, and I got so mad. I started venting. And as soon as words were coming out of my mouth, I really felt God say, are you going to choose that offense? Or are you going to choose grace? You know, are you going to keep getting hung up on this hurt, or are you going to finally hand it over to me where it belongs? And we have that choice. You know, as the church, do we see the hurts, whether they're big or small? Do we see the offenses, whether they're intentional or not? Or do we see grace? You know, do we struggle to make eye contact because it just reminds us of this issue or that? Or do we look into their eyes and see those that we have been called to co-labor with in the pursuit of spreading the gospel of Jesus? You know, another struggle for me is envy. You ever get this? You know, God starts doing something really awesome in somebody's life, and you start getting a little miffed about it. You know, they have success somewhere in their life, and you get that internal feeling, whether it's voiced or not. Must be nice. I mean, this creeps into my heart so easily sometimes. But our response should be something so much different than that. You know, last year we visited Aaron's family in California, and I got up early one morning to go surfing. And I'm talking like 5:30 in the morning here. And Ethan heard me, and he came out of his bedroom, and he came into the living room where I was getting ready. And he says, "Daddy, are you going surfing?" I said, "Yeah, bud." He says, "All right, well, I hope you catch a lot of waves." And then he stood at the window waving and smiling at me as I drove off. I mean, wow, here's my 4-year-old who, if I would have said, "Buddy, load up, you're going to the beach with me," it would have been the best thing in the world to him. But he's rejoicing in the fact that I get to go and do something that brings me joy. And it was this incredibly powerful picture as I drove off that what our lives should look like, you know, of rejoicing and celebrating each other's joy. And Paul says that in Romans 12:15. He says, "Rejoice with those who rejoice." You know, I should be handing out fist bumps, not grumbling inside about how I wished it happened to me. And in the same way, as a church, we're called to celebrate each other's victories, you know, to spur each other on, to build each other up. And that's exactly where I think Paul is going with this as well, because just a few verses later we read, "Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others." I mean, he goes on to say that we should be of the same mindset of Jesus, who humbled himself to the point of death on a cross. Now, this is what we are ultimately about as the church. You know, the church is bigger than our differences. You know, as the church, we're a part of something that's bigger than our hurts, something that's bigger than our envy, and ultimately something that's bigger than ourselves. We're a collection of different parts and pieces who have been called to live in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ, standing firm in the Spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel. It's you and I, lions and tigers and bears. We're the church.